Star Wars has always been a franchise that pushes the boundaries of imagination and storytelling. From its vibrant characters to its sprawling universe, the series is known for its ability to balance spectacle and substance. One of its defining elements has been its iconic superweapons, which serve as symbols of power and danger. However, as the saga progressed, these superweapons began to lose their impact. Instead of feeling like meaningful additions to the story, they started to feel like repetitive plot devices. The concept of a superweapon is inherently dramatic. It's a tool of absolute destruction that raises the stakes to the highest possible level. But the problem with relying on such devices is that they can quickly become predictable. When the story revolves around a massive weapon that inevitably gets destroyed, it limits the narrative possibilities. The audience already knows the outcome, and the suspense is replaced with a sense of déjà vu. This over-reliance on superweapons isn't just a Star Wars issue. It's a broader trend in modern blockbuster storytelling. These giant, catastrophic devices are often used as shortcuts to create tension, but they rarely leave a lasting emotional impact. Instead of exploring new ideas or diving deeper into the characters, the story becomes focused on stopping the weapon. This can overshadow the more meaningful themes and relationships that make a story memorable. In Star Wars, superweapons work best when they serve as more than just plot devices. The original Death Star wasn't just a threat, it was a symbol of the Empire's oppressive power. Its destruction was a turning point that resonated because of the emotional stakes involved. But as these weapons became larger and more destructive, they lost that personal connection. The focus shifted to scale and spectacle, leaving less room for the kind of intimate storytelling that defines Star Wars at its best. This discussion isn't about rejecting superweapons entirely. They can be effective tools when used thoughtfully, but their impact depends on how they're integrated into the story. When they're used as shortcuts or recycled ideas, they lose their meaning and become forgettable. In the case of Starkiller Base and others like it, the flaws aren't just in the design of the weapon, but in the missed opportunity to tell a more compelling and original story. Let's begin by addressing the central issue with Starkiller Base. Star Wars has long had a fascination with superweapons, from the Death Star to Starkiller Base. But while the Death Star became iconic, Starkiller Base feels like an uninspired reiteration of a tired concept. Superweapons are often used as a quick way to raise the stakes, but they can also oversimplify the narrative. When the focus shifts to an oversized weapon, it often detracts from more meaningful storylines. Starkiller Base raises questions about creativity and storytelling in Star Wars. When The Force Awakens introduced it, fans immediately compared it to the Death Star. The larger scale didn't make it feel new or inventive, and instead, it highlighted a reliance on reusing old ideas. The problem with this approach is that it risks alienating fans who want fresh, engaging stories rather than recycled elements. Another issue is that superweapons often fall into the trap of being one-dimensional plot devices. They exist solely to be destroyed by the heroes, which limits their potential to add depth to the story. Starkiller Base is a prime example of this. It's introduced, wreaks havoc, and is promptly destroyed. This cycle feels rushed and unsatisfying, leaving little room for intrigue or complexity. Ultimately, Starkiller Base wasn't just a bad idea, it was a missed opportunity. Star Wars has a rich universe filled with fascinating characters and conflicts. Leaning on yet another superweapon overshadowed the chance to explore more unique and compelling storylines. One of the biggest criticisms of Starkiller Base is how derivative it feels. The Force Awakens was already walking a fine line with its parallels to A New Hope, but Starkiller Base pushed it over the edge. It wasn't just a nod to the Death Star, it was practically the same concept, just bigger. This left audiences feeling like they were watching a rehash rather than something innovative. The original Death Star was groundbreaking in 1977, because it was the first time audiences had seen something like it. It became a cultural icon. But by the time Starkiller Base came along, the concept had lost its impact. Instead of feeling awe or dread, audiences felt déjà vu. It's hard to feel the same tension when you've seen the same scenario play out before. This repetition also reflects a lack of risk-taking in storytelling. Star Wars has always been about pushing boundaries and exploring new ideas. Reintroducing another superweapon felt like a step backward, playing it safe rather than challenging audiences with something fresh. This approach not only hurt the movie, but also weakened the sequel trilogy as a whole. What makes Star Wars special is its ability to surprise and inspire. Starkiller Base, however, was the opposite of that. It was predictable and uninspired, which undermined the potential for a more engaging and memorable narrative. Starkiller Base tried to outdo the Death Star by being bigger and more destructive. It wasn't just a planet-destroying weapon, it was a system-destroying weapon. But bigger doesn't always mean better. In fact, this escalation undermined the story by making it less relatable and harder to grasp emotionally. The destruction of Alderaan in A New Hope was impactful because it was personal. We saw Leia's reaction, and we understood the stakes. Starkiller Base, on the other hand, destroys multiple planets at once, but it happens so quickly that it feels detached. There's no time to process the loss or connect with the tragedy, which makes it feel hollow. This focus on scale also creates practical problems. A weapon that destroys entire star systems raises questions about how such technology could even exist. Star Wars has always required some suspension of disbelief, but Starkiller Base pushes it too far. The sheer size and power of the weapon make it feel implausible, even within the fantastical universe of Star Wars. In the end, the attempt to go bigger with Starkiller Base backfired. Instead of feeling awe or terror, audiences were left questioning the logic and purpose of such a weapon. This is a clear example of how scale without substance can weaken a story. Another issue with Starkiller Base is its lack of strategic sense. The First Order poured immense resources into building this weapon, yet it ultimately served as a single-use device. Once it fired, it became a massive target. The decision to focus so heavily on this one project was short-sighted and unrealistic. A better strategy for the First Order would have been to invest in multiple, smaller-scale initiatives that could have achieved their goals without such risk. By putting all their eggs in one basket, they made themselves vulnerable. Starkiller Base's destruction was not only predictable, but also inevitable. From a military standpoint, the weapon's design is fundamentally flawed. Its reliance on draining a star for power makes it unsustainable. Once the star is consumed, the base is rendered useless. This is not only a tactical failure, but also an environmental one. The idea of destroying entire systems, including their own energy source, feels counterproductive. The First Order's obsession with Starkiller Base highlights their arrogance and lack of foresight. While this could be seen as a character flaw of the organization, it ultimately reflects poorly on the story itself. It's hard to take them seriously as villains when their plans are so poorly conceived. For a weapon of such massive scale, Starkiller Base lacks emotional weight. Its destruction of the Hosnian system is supposed to be a pivotal moment, but it doesn't resonate with the audience. Unlike Alderaan, we don't know the people or culture being destroyed. This makes it hard to care about the loss. The lack of emotional connection extends to the characters as well. While Leia and the Resistance react to the destruction, their grief feels surface level. There's no exploration of how this event impacts them on a deeper level. Without that emotional resonance, the stakes feel hollow. Part of the problem is the pacing of the film. The destruction of the Hosnian system happens so quickly that there's no time to reflect on it. The story rushes forward without giving the audience a chance to absorb the gravity of what just happened. This robs the moment of its potential impact. Emotional weight is crucial in storytelling, especially in a franchise like Star Wars. Starkiller Base had the potential to deliver a powerful moment, but the execution fell flat. This is another example of how the concept was fundamentally flawed. Starkiller Base could have been an opportunity to expand the Star Wars universe in meaningful ways. Instead, it felt like a retread of old ideas. The concept of a weapon built into a planet is intriguing, but the film does little to explore the implications of this. What was life like on the planet before it was transformed into a weapon? Were there native inhabitants? How did the First Order manage to construct such a massive project without detection? These are fascinating questions that could have added depth and intrigue to the story. Instead, they are left unanswered. The lack of world building also extends to the Hosnian system. We know almost nothing about these planets before they are destroyed. This makes it hard to feel the weight of their loss. A little more effort in developing these locations could have gone a long way in making the destruction more impactful. Star Wars thrives on its rich, detailed universe. Starkiller Base was a chance to contribute to that legacy, but it failed to deliver. Instead, it felt like a shallow concept that was only there to serve the plot. Starkiller Base is a prime example of how nostalgia can be overused. The Force Awakens leaned heavily on familiar elements to win back fans after the prequel trilogy. While this approach worked in some areas, it became a crutch when it came to Starkiller Base. The weapon is essentially a larger version of the Death Star, which feels more like fan service than genuine creativity. Nostalgia can be a powerful tool when used sparingly, but relying on it too much can make a story feel derivative. Starkiller Base crossed that line. This overuse of nostalgia also undermined the sequel trilogy's ability to stand on its own. By rehashing old ideas, it failed to establish its own identity. Starkiller Base became a symbol of this problem, representing the trilogy's struggle to balance the old and the new. For Star Wars to thrive, it needs to embrace innovation while respecting its roots. Starkiller Base leaned too heavily on the past, and as a result, it felt like a step backward rather than forward. Starkiller Base serves as a cautionary tale for storytellers. It highlights the dangers of relying on spectacle over substance, of recycling old ideas rather than taking creative risks. While it had the potential to be an exciting addition to the Star Wars universe, it ultimately fell short. The biggest lesson from Starkiller Base is the importance of innovation. Star Wars is at its best when it pushes boundaries and surprises its audience. By leaning on familiar tropes, the sequel trilogy missed an opportunity to truly stand out. It's also a reminder that bigger isn't always better. Starkiller Base's scale was impressive, but it came at the cost of emotional resonance and narrative depth. True impact comes from meaningful storytelling, not just visual spectacle. As we reflect on Starkiller Base, it's clear that it was a bad idea. But by examining its flaws, we can gain a better understanding of what makes Star Wars great, and how it can continue to evolve in the future. Thanks so much for watching. I spend a good bit of time making sure each video is great. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really helps out and means a lot to me. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you in the next one.